It's understandable the mistrust that many black people have because of what happened in Tuskegee. I made a statement and I took this as my platform. Elect me mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, and never again will we allow the federal government, the state government, or any other governmental body to come into Tuskegee, Alabama and take advantage of our people. That was my platform, and I meant it. But there is no reason in 2021 for any American to say that I'm not going to take the vaccine because of what happened in Tuskegee. In this day and time, black scientists, black doctors are involved in the development of the vaccine. They are involved in helping to shape the public policy, which makes it possible for this vaccination program to be administered to the American people. John Lewis talked about good trouble, fighting racism, fighting hunger, fighting inadequate health care, fighting COVID. It's a war, and you have to fight it just like you would fight any other war. I'm willing to go to jail, I'm willing to die for it, I'm willing to struggle for it because it is right. The struggle goes on.
We don't duck and dodge. Ain't no ever waters on my schedule. 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 Ain't no ever waters on my schedule.
Just saying. We think Coach Maynard, we're gonna let you have the last word in terms of Alabama A&M fans. But anything that you want to share with the viewers, any last thoughts you want to share?
Did I want to share?
Yeah.
Oh, go Bulldogs! Hey, baby, y'all tune in ESPN this week, and we're gonna try to make you proud and give you a good show, offensive, defensive, special teams, and represent the way the Bulldogs represent.
Don't worry, it's all a part of the game. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern for Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Course, lecture, dismissed.
True Black Essentials is a retail opportunity to bring black businesses under one roof where every product on every shelf in every aisle will be black owned and black produced by people all over the world. Statistics show that the $1.3 trillion of spending power that we have as black people can easily be turned into each black person having $2 million if we were to shop black for 2 years. So True Black Essentials will launch an e-commerce store on November 1st, 2020. But we will open up brick and mortar stores in Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, Houston, and Jacksonville, with the very first store opening in Atlanta, June 19, 2021.
But you stay on hard.
Hello and welcome to a live edition of the BCSN SportsWrap. Brian Fulford and A.D. Drew here, coming off a long weekend, man. We were all over the country, from all the way down in South Florida out to Montgomery, Alabama. It's good to be back in our homes, and congratulations to everybody who went out and enjoyed games this past weekend. You made it. You made it through the first weekend of the season. But, man, we got a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack here. Drew, have you recovered from the long weekend?
No. Not till I get to my bed tonight, then I might have a chance.
Hey, it's back to work for some of us. Some of us still grinding. A lot of us still grinding. We hope you did it safely. So definitely. We're recording this on a Labor Day Monday. Normally in this particular time slot, at this time, you'd be watching Knights of the Round Table, hosted by Drew, of course, and our brothers with the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. But that'll be tomorrow night, correct, Drew?
Yes, tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Central, after Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab.
All right. Well, so, everything kind of get pushed forward today. Normally, our show, we do our live show on Sunday evenings right before what will be the time slot after us, where BJ Jones will be coming on after us on Sunday night. So it was good to be out and about in those places. Thank you to everyone for supporting. It was good. I bumped into different people down in South Florida. I know you guys did, probably in Montgomery. So it's good to see that people are watching, paying attention to the Black College Sports Network. We appreciate you following and subscribing. Continue to do so, like and share, because it always helps. And make sure you download that Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Go to your Google or Apple Play Store and search My JBN or My BCSN.
Brian, I actually had some people who walked up to me and it's like, yeah, I watch y'all all the time, man. Well, I'm like, well, unless you hit like or share or subscribe, I don't know this, but I appreciate you. I definitely appreciate you. Appreciate you watching us and everything. And I even had people telling me about some comment I made here or some comment I made there, or, just little simple stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So again, thank you to everybody out there who's out and about. And, it was good to bump into some people down in South Florida, bumped into some guys, that cover from other groups, HBCU Game Day, bumped into Wally down that way. And I know you probably bumped into some people up in Montgomery.
I bumped into Tolly Carr, bumped into Michael Jefferson, and Michael Harvey.
Okay, nice.
Those are three people that I bumped in, and of course, Jamie Walker was actually there on location with us on Sunday.
Yeah, and of course, so you bumped into Jamie Walker, who'll be joining us later on the show. I, of course, bumped into Charles Bishop and Neely of the pregame show at Jackson State, and so we'll have Charles on a little bit later at the top of the second hour. A little bit later in the first hour, we'll have Jamie Walker on, of course. His podcast, the AUC Gridiron Rewind. He will be breaking down, especially the big weekend for Clark Atlanta, who got a win. Congratulations to Clark on opening the season with a win. Morehouse, unfortunately, didn't fare so well in their opening weekend, but a lot of teams, Drew, struggled in the opening weekend, and so that's sort of where we're going with our number one topic for this show is how do you put this? Let's just focus in on non-conference, because obviously you're going to get a lot of non-conference games. I mean, there were very few conference games. Of course, the SWAC, you had the Labor Day Classic between Prairie View and Texas Southern. You had FAMU, Jackson State. Those were conference games. You had no conference games necessarily in the MEAC. You had a couple in the SIAC, and I think you may have had one in the CIAA, although check me on the rules. I don't know if those counted per se, But what we can
No, neither one of those. Those were conference games.
Okay. So needless to say, this was a strictly non-conference day, and it wasn't too good. It was not too good. Speaking from a conference perspective, let's start with the best. Let's give the praise for the conference that did the best and had the best non-conference schedule, and that was the SWAC. The SWAC had the best non-conference schedule or non-conference results. They were 4-3 over the weekend. Now, I don't know if you want to discount the fact or just call it what it was. 2 of those wins were against Division II teams. You can if you want. I'll just say that. The other 2 were against HBCUs in FCS level. So that was that. Now, the 3 losses, though, were against our HWCUs or PWI schools, and they didn't fare too well. Southern losing to Troy, Bethune-Cookman losing to UTEP, but they did cover. I told you Bethune would cover. I gave you that one. That was a free play of the day. And then on Thursday, Mississippi Valley State lost 35-0. Over in the MEAC was 1-4 non-conference, 0-3 versus the PWI or HWCU schools, with the lone win coming against another D2 school. Although I would say this is one of the better D2s in HBCU football. So anything to take away. Oh, and then I guess our independent FCS schools, you had A&T losing to a PWI, Furman 29-18, I believe. You had Hampton, picking up a win over, of course, a Division II team, Virginia Union. And then you had, of course, as mentioned, Tennessee State. They actually lost to Grambling. So Drew, before I move over to the Division II level, not a very good day record-wise. The wins came against Division II schools. What are your thoughts on what our FCS teams did non-conference-wise?
Bryan, you didn't emphasize the greatest point out of this. 0-7. That was our record against historically white colleges and universities on that same or higher level, because some of those, like Southern Troy, was a check game, but it was a HWCU.
Right.
So whether it's FCS versus FCS, FBS, not only did we lose, we did not look good in most of those games.
Yeah, there were 3 check games. Norfolk State losing Toledo 49-10. Troy, and of course UTEP, as mentioned. And what do you think what's more disappointing? Like I thought A&T, of all those games, I was most disappointed and probably shocked at A&T. I really was one of those people that thought A&T would beat Furman, and Furman just seemed to be a little bit much for A&T early on. That kind of surprised me.
Yeah. The shocker to me was Troy Southern. I thought Southern would go in and compete with Troy, but then we find out today that there were some players who were held out of that game for reasons that they have not released yet.
Right.
So, and I believe 3 or 4 of those were starters that were held out in that game. I think the number was 11. Don't quote me. I don't have the article in front of me. I glanced at it. I did not have a chance to read it in depth. I was in my car. I saw the headline come across and looked at it. But there were some starters that we had out of that game. I know that contributed to the loss. I don't know if that contributed to the level of the loss.
They had 4 interceptions. I counted that when I went back and watched. And of course, I didn't get a chance to watch the entire game, so I'll confess. But what I did watch, I watched 4 interceptions, and I know when you're playing Santa Claus against a team like anybody, really, especially a team that level up, can't be a good thing. So not a good start. And a lot of people probably didn't expect Southern to cover. There was a 25-point spread. Would have been nice to see Southern cover it, but that is what it is. Now, over on the D2 level, though, the under D1, as we like to call it, it was a little worse. Well, we'll see. Was it worse? Let's ask that question here, because from a conference perspective, starting with the SIAC, they were 2-4 in non-conference games, but they were 1-2 against their PWI opponents over in the SIAC. And that one win came from Albany State on the road with a shutout, matter of fact, at Mississippi College. But Morehouse and Savannah State got bludgeoned by West Alabama and Valdosta State, 48-7 and 53-7, respectively. Then over in the CIAA, they were 1-7 non-conference. That was the worst non-conference showing overall in general by the CIAA. 1-7. They were 1-4 against PWIs. The lone win coming from not necessarily HBCU. Again, we're just talking conference level wise. The lone win came from Shawan in overtime at Mars Hill. Drew?
Do we count Shawan?
No, you don't count them.
I don't know, and I'm asking that in general.
In general, yeah.
The CIAA counts Shawan, obviously.
Right.
What disappointed me more than anything were the regional matchups.
Okay.
Did we talk SIAC yet?
I mentioned that they were 2-4 non-conference.
Okay.
1-2 versus
the Savannah State, Valdosta State. The Morehouse, West Alabama. The Lenore Rhine and Virginia State.
Right.
The Shaw, and I believe Shaw played Wingate.
At Wingate, yep.
Yes. So not only did we lose the game, we did not compete in those games. Those were regional games. Those are teams that CIAA or SIAC teams will be potentially matching up with in the playoffs. Those conferences are all in the same region. So for you to go out and I hate to say lay an egg, but we laid an egg.
They weren't competitive games.
We lost by an average of 35 points in those 4 games.
Right.
So we've got to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to be able to compete with these white programs who should be on equal level with us.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm still searching for that something tangible to hold on to tell me why we're losing.
I'll tell you why.
They're training. I mean, look, I got to believe our programs are training just like they are, aren't they? I mean, we're not training in the offseason as much as they are.
Have you walked into some of the historically white Division II facilities?
But, okay, but do the facilities make that much of a difference?
Yes.
If you were telling me about
the
nutrition tables and things of that nature, I'll buy that. I'll buy it because that's important. But I mean, I've seen people do a lot with less. I don't think it's always the indicator.
How long ago was that, bro, Brian? These athletes today are spoiled and want stuff. When my high school has, a full training facility and different things, I want to see that when I make that decision to go to college. Those kids are making the decision when I've got an HBCU with average facilities, and I've got and I'm talking about maybe like a D2 athlete. I'm a 3-star. I'm a D2 athlete. I've got an HBCU offering me all this experience, all this culture and everything, but then I have to go stay in dorms that were built in the 1940s. I go down to a stadium that hasn't been renovated since the 60s. And I go to this other institution over here that has dorms that were built in the 2000s, that has a stadium that was renovated in the 2000s. So it has training facilities and everything else that are under 20 years old. Where am I going to sign at? You have more of those kids still signing with those institutions. This movement back to HBCUs is only a year or two old. So it's going to be a couple of years before that talent gap closes and these children decide that they want to go to HBCUs for what HBCUs were meant for. Those experienced players are still at those other institutions. And that's going to be my final take on that before we head to break.
Just want to mention there were a couple of other not very good performances on a non-conference level from our independents. You had Bluefield. Actually, and those games were close, though. So I want to say this. West Virginia State losing a non-conference game, but they lose by 8. Bluefield State returns to football for the first time since the mid-60s. They lose by a touchdown. Texas College, unfortunately, lost by 70-something points to West Texas A&M, and VU Lynchburg lost. What was the total number, Drew, from just the HBCUs non-conference, and we'll close on that point?
HBCU, HWCU non-conference was 1-18.
Wow.
HBCU, HWCU conference 1-2. Langston had a victory, and Lincoln of Missouri had a loss in conference matchup against historically white institutions. That long win for our HBCUs didn't even occur this weekend. It occurred Thursday night when Albany State defeated Mississippi College 24-0.
Congratulations, Albany State, for carrying the flag. A lot of work to do from our other programs. 1-18. That's a number. And you know, I hate to be that guy, but that is something I will be looking at all September as we talk. Go ahead, Drew. One final point.
Don't forget, everybody. FCS teams, BAC, SWAC, and A&T, in this case, because Tennessee State and Hampton play HBCUs. But BAC, SWAC, A&T, 0-7.
So 0-7 from the FCS, 1-18 overall, up and down the board. A lot to work on. We got more when we come back. Jamie Walker from the AUC Gridiron Rewind will be joining us. We'll get a chance to talk with him about Clark's big win, talk a little bit about Morehouse, and then his thoughts about the Red Tails Classic this past weekend. You're watching and listening to the BCSN SportsWrap with Bryan and A.D. We'll be back right after these words. This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports
Tell everybody
Network.
they can follow their dreams.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Ryan Fulford and A.D. Drew here. I want to thank you for taking time to interact with us on social media, of course, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at MyBCSN1. Even if you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that way you get the notifications whenever our shows are streaming. Drew, you got a couple of comments out there from a few folks. What are the people saying, Drew?
Let's see. Charles Moore says TU didn't show up. That stuff happens. Boy, did it happen this past weekend.
Should it happen though? Should it happen? Should you ever say that about your team? You should never say that about your team.
I should never say that about the Tuskegee Golden Tigers. I will not accept that, Charles Moore. I cannot.
And what's bad is that's the season opener. What does the rest of the season look like if you don't show up for the first game of the year?
I really don't know, but all credit goes to Fort Valley for playing a excellent ball game against us. A-Back says, let's go Tigers. Renee Brown says, TU, let's do this, TU. And Marvin Harris countered with, let's go Wildcat. Willie Alex Hines also reminded us that wait a minute, I just lost the comment on the thing, but that Virginia State lost to Lenoir-Rhyne, and
yeah, they hosted that game. They lost that game as a host.
Yes, they did. So D2 Virginia State lost to Lenoir-Rhyne 47-7 at home. That's that point I was talking about, us versus those non-HBCU games. So
and speaking of
shout out to Will Sincere from down at Florida Memorial giving us a shout out, and shout out to Anthony McLean says, what's up, Brian?
Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. Anthony.
Space Age 3000. HBCUs never recruit from Augusta, Georgia. Lots of talent there. But there you go. Especially Savannah State, you right up the road. Morehouse, Clark, you right up the road.
Now that was if that was a recruiting battle game between Valdosta and Savannah State, that was a bad showing. As I was looking at the box score on that game, 2 fumble recoveries by Valdosta State, 2 fumble recovered touchdowns, a 50-yard field goal in the second quarter, completely flatlined probably any chances Savannah State might have had to be competitive in that ball game. That was disappointing. That was our most hyped non-HBCU versus HBCU game, and that one fell flat. Matter of fact, all of our, well, let me see. As I think back to our 5, I don't think any of our 5s lived up to the hype. The closest game.
I think we had 2 of them lived up to the hype, because did we have Alabama A&M?
Well, I was talking about I was thinking more along the HBCU versus PWIs.
Oh, no, none of those did. No.
Although I will say Bethune UTEP was a 17-14 game at one point late in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. So that one, I had hope. I had hope that the dog would come home barking. The dog still covered, but I was hoping for the outright by Bethune. Let me say this though. I will say, and this is sort of our second point. And shout out to HBCU Game Day for bringing this out. North Carolina A&T, Alcorn State, FAMU, Bowie State, Miles College, all 5 teams losing after being out for more than 600 days. And it just so happened that all 5 of those teams were ranked preseason. And any poll you read, they were either ranked 1, 2, 3, or maybe as low as 4. I don't think any of them were any lower than 4.
Just say top 5.
Well, okay. But yeah, no lower than top 5 in the preseason. And if you include Savannah State, you would include essentially your top 4 teams, or top 3, top 4, with the exception of Alabama A&M, all losing out the box. I mean, that's so look, that's rare. Let me just say that. I think it's very rare, and especially given the fact that none of those teams played teams that you would expect them to lose. Like, you know what I'm saying? They didn't play a paycheck game. I mean, A&T played a Furman team that you expected them to win. I did. Alcorn State, of course, we expected them to beat Central. FAMU, there was an expectation that was a winnable game against Jackson State. Bowie, I was one of the people that thought they would go up to Delaware State and win that. Miles, winnable game against Alabama State.
I need to correct you on that, Brian.
Okay.
Miles gave that game. Well, Alabama State did everything but lose that game.
Okay, talk about it.
We'll say that for a future segment, though.
Well, but the fact that those 5 teams all losing, you know, it's one of the things why we, Black College Sports Network, why we don't do a preseason poll. I mean, look, there's enough polls out there for everybody to feast on, but we just kind of came up with this mindset because, look, what are you going to do now? I mean, I know we vote in other polls, but now I'm left to scramble and evaluate week 1 after 600 days off. I mean, how do you do that?
Especially
really
at the Division II level where you don't even know who half the roster is.
Yeah. I mean, there were guys who some of these schools had just transferred in literally a week or 2 ago and were on the field. I know that was the case for FAMU. There were guys who had just transferred in a couple of weeks ago and all of a sudden were playing. And so I would imagine that was the case in a few places. Among those 5, you mentioned Miles. I would say in terms of who was the most shocking or surprising defeat, I've really got to say A&T. And maybe that's because I've been kind of leaning on the fact that A&T's history of late. But then what we see is, you know, A&T with a new quarterback, you know, having to go on the road. That there's a big challenge there. Big challenge with that game. And Bowie had enough turnovers. I mean, they got themselves down in a hurry. I mean, shout out to Delaware State and Coach Rod Milstead and what they're building at Delaware State. I mean, Del State had built a lead, I believe, 26-3 at halftime after a pick 6 was returned by Asias Guthrie for Delaware State. He returned it 87 yards for a touchdown. Del State is up 26-3. Bowie made a good effort to try to get back in that ball game. But when you have, listen to this, 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles. Well, let me back up. This is Delaware State. Delaware State had 4 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, 3 block kicks. 2 of them were PATs. 1 of them was a punt block.
Have you noticed what the theme of week 0 and week 1 has been, Brian? And you just said it right there in that breakdown. Special teams, turnovers that you normally don't see. Interceptions happen. Fumbles should not happen. I've seen more fumbles in these 2 weeks of football that I have seen in a long time. And the only fumbles that go on the stat sheets are the turnovers. I've seen many fumbles recovered by the offense that do not get put on the stat sheets. So that 600 days, I said it from the beginning. It's going to be week 3, week 4 before we start seeing real football and can really evaluate these teams, especially the teams that had the layoff and those teams that played in the spring. Will they have tired legs? Will they have tired bodies? Week 3, week 4, that's when all those little nicks and dings start showing up. But those little nicks and dings that you normally go see the trainer for may turn out to be injuries that cost you a game or two because of the wear and tear from the spring. So let's look at this at end of September, 1st of October.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point that you bring up. I think from a defensive perspective, the Jackson State FAMU game, I think clearly defense, the turnovers by Jackson State's offense kept Florida A&M in that game close, because without the turnovers when they happened by Jackson State might have won that game by 10 points. I mean, that's how bad it was offensively, or maybe that's how good Jackson State defense had played. And, we'll kind of get into a little segment that we're going to do called Bull and Bear, teams that we're bullish about, teams that we're bearish about. But I think that was telling. So, I mean, as much as I put that on North Carolina A&T's defense, not really able to, I'm just kind of looking here at the total yardage here by nearly 500 yards, 487 of total yards by Furman. I mean, that's A&T. We've expected the defense to be at a certain level for so long, and we just didn't get that. And I don't know if it's the 600 days off, and I don't think that's a legit excuse to use because of the fact that you had spring practices. Yes, I know you didn't have the
in spring practice like you hit in a spring game.
Yeah, but shouldn't you be fresher though? Shouldn't you have more juice in the legs because you haven't been getting hit for those, 60 plays, 60 or 70 plays times 11 games. So, I mean, those 700 plays where you haven't been getting hit, and probably half of that, because half of that's, you're 60 that's offense. Yeah, so 700 plays that you didn't have where you were getting hit. You should be a little fresher. So I would think the opposite.
But, Brian, you see things, and you're going to see things these first couple of weeks like you've never seen before, such as a strip six. We know what a fumble six is. We all know what a pick six is. Have you seen a strip six? And what I'm talking about is in the Red Tails Classic, Tuskegee, Fort Valley State, where Zacharias Anderson stripped the Tuskegee running back and ran the ball back 6 yards. Now, when I say stripped, as in took the ball out his hand as he was coming into the pile, into the hole. Ball never touched the ground. It almost looked like a handoff, except he was going the other direction for a touchdown. 60 yards for a touchdown.
We almost had a similar play in the Jackson State FAMU game where on a handoff, deep in Jackson State territory, FAMU on offense, the ball is fumbled. The Jackson State defensive lineman comes up with the ball inside of the maybe 10, 5-yard line, somewhere in there. And as he's coming up with it, trying to get himself settled and possibly, lumber towards the goal line, FAMU's running back, Bishop Bonnet, ends up taking the ball back from the defensive lineman who took it and ends up giving FAMU essentially a new set of downs, because the ball was literally gone. I think the official called it the defense
had possession,
recovered the fumble. The defense recovered the fumble. The offense recovered the defense's fumble. The offense retains possession, a new first down. He said something. New set it down. Something to that effect happened. But yeah, we had the same thing, just on the opposite end as it related to the offense. So
we got Jamie Walker ready to join us here, Brian. So
all right, let's go ahead and take a break.
You see this, right?
4. What's 4?
When Jamie comes in, I'm going to explain to you what this means. You know, and it is not for the fourth quarter as we traditionally see it in football. Okay.
All right. I look, that's a great show tease. We'll come back and figure out what 4 fingers means coming up right after this break. You're watching the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan and A.D. Coming up next, Jamie Walker from the AUC Gridiron Rewind.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
This is Carlos Brown, letting you know that we're on the move. You can now catch the Carlos Brown Show beginning this July on the Black College Sports Network each and every Saturday from 11 to 1 Eastern Time. That's 10 to 12 Central Time. Same time, new place. On Facebook at the Carlos Brown Show and Black College Sports Network. Online at www.mybcsn.net and on the BCSN app, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your fam.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan and A.D. Drew, and there you see the man in the middle from the host of AUC Gridiron Rewind and Coach Work Productions, Mr. Jamie Walker. Jamie, thanks for coming in and joining us, man. How you doing, my brother?
I am pretty good. I can't complain. How about you all?
We're recovering from the long weekend. Yeah, it's just good to be back in the home studios, I guess, is the best feeling I have right now.
For sure.
Well, as I mentioned, the SIAC 2-4 non-conference, CIAA 1-7. From that level, on the Division II level, you were at the Red Tails Classic, correct?
I was.
Yeah, let's start there first before we get into talking a little bit about Clark and Morehouse from that perspective. But what was your takeaway on Fort Valley State? 30-0 with a win over Tuskegee. What was your thoughts on that game and that outcome?
Well, I know during the Game Time show, me and AD actually chopped it up about both teams, and both of us thought that Tuskegee would win. I think AD said Tuskegee would win going away. And I think I thought it would be a little bit closer, but I thought they'd win too. I had absolutely no idea that those kind of halftime adjustments that coaches are charged to make would just be so one-sided for one team. I mean, it was close going in, and either team could have pulled out a victory, but Tuskegee just looked lost offensively. And so I just did not know that Fort Valley was capable of really they played a couple of games in the spring. And everybody's kind of talked about the opponents, during the spring not being the caliber of opponent that you would see in the SIAC, but I didn't know they would be that prepared. And so, they came out in the second half, made some adjustments, and really had their offense and defense clicking. Ball takeaways and just all kinds of stuff going on. So Fort Valley looks the part. They definitely look the part so far.
Drew, I'll give you an opportunity to defend Tuskegee and what you saw and didn't see.
I can't. I would love to defend Tuskegee. Well, I will defend Tuskegee. The Tuskegee defense did not play a bad game at all. So look at down the stats. Fort Valley had 166 yards passing and 118 yards rushing. That's a respectable defensive effort. Under 300. That's what your goal is as a defensive unit. Keep your opponent under 300. They did keep them under 300. But the problem was points off of turnovers. There were turnovers on both ways, but Tuskegee obviously did not capitalize on the turnovers that were given to them, whereas Fort Valley did capitalize on the turnovers. Tuskegee held Fort Valley to 2 field goals in the first half, and Fort Valley was 2 for 3 on field goals. One of those field goals was I believe it was a 50-yarder, Jamie. 48 or a 50-yarder, the one that was just short.
It was.
Yeah. And the other 2 were basically chip shots where the defense held in the red zone. So Tuskegee's defense played good.
They did.
Here's the problem. Fort Valley's defense played better. I believe it was Tuskegee's first drive. It was either the first or the second drive, Jamie. I got so much in my head, it's hard to remember. Tuskegee got down in the red zone inside the 10. They ran the ball 4 times. We thought Tuskegee was going to have the dominant offensive line, considering the experience that they have back on their offensive line. Fort Valley's defense stayed stout. And Fort Valley's defense stopped Tuskegee so close to the goal line, if the center comes up to the ball and sneezes, it's a touchdown. That's how close that ball was to the goal line when Fort Valley stopped him. And you want to know what this number is for? This was right here. Jamie could tell you. This is for 1, 2, 3, 4. Total yards rushing for Tuskegee in the game. 4 yards net rushing for the entire game. But wait a minute. This is what makes this eye-popping. On 36 attempts.
Well, but you also, what plays against that rushing stats are the 7 sacks she gave up.
Sacks go against your passing stats in college.
What's that?
Sacks go against your passing yards in college. It only counts as a rush attempt if the quarterback actually tries to run. On a design run or even on a scramble, if he gets tackled if he attempts to pass first and then scrambles and gets tackled behind the line, those 2-3 yards come off his passing stats.
Well, but if you look at the yards lost by Bryson Williams, your quarterback from Tuskegee, he was sacked 4 times, right? He was sacked. 12 attempts.
Those are rushes, Brian. Yards. Those were rushes those were design runs with those net 8 yards lost. Those were design runs.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Or not reading the proper read on the read option.
So between that and the 7 sacks, you had a bad day overall offensively for Tuskegee. And now that makes me very nervous about Fort Valley State. I should not be, but I am nervous for FAMU because let's just keep it real. That Fort Valley State defense, if they come in with the right mindset, and given how bad the Florida A&M offense looked, that's going to be an interesting matchup. Shouldn't be, but it will be something to talk about later in the week. Jamie, let's get over to Clark Atlanta, one of the two teams that you cover for on the AUC, Gridiron Rewind, which normally you would have that podcast out on a Tuesday, but this week you'll hopefully be able to get that out a little later in the week. So make sure to go download that podcast. I know it's on Spotify and then pretty much everywhere else that you can download, and just look up I keep wanting to say CAU, but AUC.
I understand.
Well, only because we're about to talk about Clark, and that's what got me right now. So here's Clark Atlanta coming off of a winless 2019. Coach Tim Bowen's first year was 2019. He has to wait some 600 days. And what do you know? Clark Atlanta comes up with a big win to open the season. Talk a little bit about Clark's 13-10 win over Livingston.
Well, wow. That game was really herky-jerky. It really was the theme with most of the games this weekend. Really the only offensive football that resembled anything that was played previous was the Alabama A&M and South Carolina State game, which South Carolina State, surprised me as well. But within this game, it started off slow. A couple of big plays by each team early. Livingstone went up early, 7-0, on a huge passing play. But then it was one of your classic, I guess, for lack of a better term, one of those boxing matches where people wanted to feel themselves out. Both teams, offensively and defensively, wanted to feel themselves out. Low scoring. There were a couple of, long pass plays here and there. Elijah Odom, quarterback for Clark Atlanta, ran the offense, effectively. It wasn't, huge. They ran out of the split spread formation where they had two backs in the backfield flanking the quarterback on each side, and mostly with two receivers, to one side. You can kind of tell their strengths, and they wanted to run the ball with a bevy of backs, and so it started off, as if it was going to be kind of like the Alcorn State game where, okay, you saw one team go in and you would think that their big playability would continue, but it just stopped. It was as if the defenses were adjusting on the fly and were able to stop the other's offense until the fourth quarter, where Clark was able to get a late touchdown and field goal in the midst of it. And that was around the third quarter. And it stayed tied 10-10 until a big penalty at the end by Livingstone that stopped Clark deep in their own territory, and then deep in Livingstone's territory. But an unsportsmanlike penalty gave them new life. Clark Atlanta kicked the field goal at the end, and that was the ball game. And so when you're looking at the ways that this game kind of went, back and forth, it was a thing of ugly football, but it was much needed for Clark, who lost a lot of leads in the 2019 campaign. They were in some ball games, but it was finally good to finally see them pull one out at the end and have the breaks go their way.
Yeah, you make mention of that 2019 season where they lost games within a touchdown to Allen, Central State. Now, those are two of the what's a nice way of saying it? Two of the I was going to say least successful teams that year, but there you go, Drew. They were even within a touchdown or 4 points of Miles that year. Lost to Savannah State in overtime. So it wasn't like, let's be honest. And of course, they lost to Morehouse at the end of the year by a point. So it wasn't like Clark 0-10 was not competitive, just couldn't close games out. So I see what you're saying in this year, where now you're able to get a win because you were able to close out a game. That's got to be a big lift.
Can I ask you a question, Jamie?
Hold on a second, Drew. Hold on, because I think you're bearing the lead here. And tell me if I'm reading the box score correctly. Now, they have this thing called scoregami in the NFL. I don't know if you're familiar with that, right, Jamie?
Yeah.
Is it true? I'm looking at the box score. The box score says at the end of the first quarter, Clark 3, Livingstone 1. Please explain the 1 point that Livingstone got at the end of the first quarter. I'm reading it, but I'm still like, what am I reading here as I look at the play-by-play?
I'm not exactly sure what you're reading.
So there was no 1
No.
point.
No, I watched that game. No, it wasn't a 1 point score. But you know what? You know what's crazy? That was the case in a few games where the scores and stuff was listed wrong. But no, it was never a 1 point. Not that I saw.
This is the only thing I can read.
I'll say this as somebody who has been in those booths keeping stats. Crap happens, and sometimes you just have to leave it and say the heck with it. Because I'm looking at something else with the stat line, and that's what I was going to ask.
Well, hold on, Drew. You tell me then. How does this work? 3rd and 8 at the Clark Atlanta 28, right? Hayes, Miles, pass complete to Fields Trey for 72-yard loss to the LCC 0-0.
That the only way that would be is a fumble, and he recovered the fumble. That's the only way. Because I was going to ask about Trey Fields. How do you have 2 receptions for negative 115 yards?
Okay, see, that's the same
You
person.
were at the game. I was just curious, or is this just a snafu in the stats?
Definitely. Definitely a snafu.
Thank you.
I thought we had this uncovered something fabulous, Jamie, but obviously it seems like our eyes are lying to us, because I'm like, how did we get 3-1? So I thought we were on to something. And Drew points out the negative 115 yards. I thought we had uncovered something, man, that we would talk about for years. But congratulations. What's the ceiling look like for Clark, Jamie?
I think they still have a long way to go in relation to establishing the type of players that Coach Bowens wants in the program. You got to think he came in, went 0-10, had a complete year away from football, and now it's coming back in. So, it could be advantageous. It could be a thing where he's getting his players in and kind of reestablishing a certain culture. He's coming from Georgia State University, and so he's familiar with the area. If you look at his background, it's one that he knows the territory and what players he needs to get, in particular recruit the Atlanta metro area, because those are the type of players that are plentiful enough to get if he's a capable recruiter, to give those guys an opportunity, because it's plenty of talent within the area. So I think right now it's so many uncertainties, but it's just good to see the ball bounce their way. You kind of ran down their schedule from 2019. They were in so many close ball games that that record could have been at least at 500 or maybe even better. And so this year it's a matter of where they can see some wins within the SIAC, and whether or not, if they can keep themselves in ball games. Because from what I saw in that Livingstone game, it wasn't a matter of the offense being high powered. They want to run the football. They want to play good defense. They want to get after the quarterback. Those basic football nuances that, a lot of coaches want to establish. And even within their spread set, they want to run the football, and the quarterback is unafraid to run with the football as well. So I think they want to, ball control out of the spread set. But, they want to get pressure with their, front four. Wasn't a whole lot of exotic blitzes or anything that they did. They just, played really base coverage. And so I think, with that game plan, along with what they do recruiting wise, I think they'll get to a level of just steering the ship right. And it's a matter of whether or not Coach Bowens can get this program on the right track.
let's transition over to Morehouse because Morehouse had to deal with West Alabama, and that was a tough opening game for them. 48-7 loss. What if anything can you take away from losing that contest the way they did?
You can't take much away at all. Just being honest with you, they got mollywopped, for lack of a better term. And I mean from start to finish. If you look at those final stats, I think they had somewhere around 35 yards of total offense. You're looking at the two primary players on offense, Michael Sims, at the quarterback position, who's picked to finish, up there in the player of the year stats, player of the year candidates, along with running back.
Sims was 12 for 37 for 98 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, and an INT. And on the ground, Sims was 5 for 13 with a -6 yards rushing. Santo Dunn, where you just get ready to talk about, 22 yards on 9 attempts.
And that was really in fourth quarter garbage action. If you look at him early, he was, for the longest time, looking at the stat crew, he had -2 yards rushing. Like, they could not run the football at all.
Where have we seen that at before?
I mean, it was not a good look at all. And so when you're looking at the ways that Morehouse, going forward, are going to lean on these two along with a couple of other offensive players that have been there, I'm curious to see where they go from here. Now, you're looking at this opponent, of course. You're playing some games early that will test what you're able to do. And I don't know if this was a good one at all. You're coming back off a year where you haven't played, so you can chop it up to it being that way, and you're getting just reaccustomed to playing ball again. But at the same time, you want a better showing than that. And I think they'll have a better showing against West Georgia, who they've competed with in the past. It's not a matter of, they're going right down the road to Carrollton. So they recruited a lot of the same players. And so they'll be familiar with each other. And again, they've been competitive with them. They've even beaten the Wolves. So I think, offensively and defensively, it'll be a better showing. I can't really give a really effective synopsis of what the defense is like. And the reason being is because the offense put them in such bad spots, kind of mirroring what Tuskegee and Fort Valley did. Because when you have a short field all the time, it's a matter of, okay, can a defense hold up in this manner? And you're always on the field. Look at the time of possession. Again, West Alabama, dominated in that regard. It kept, going with, Morehouse offense kept with the 3 and outs. And so you're putting your defense in a really tough spot when it comes to whether or not they can hold an opposing offense on it. And give credit to West Alabama as well. Their passing game was phenomenal. And they were able to balance out what they did offensively and keep Morehouse both off the field and kept themselves in a scoring position all the time. So hopefully Morehouse plays better. I'm sure Coach Freeman will have them playing better against West Georgia.
Yeah, that's a tough schedule for Morehouse to start. Obviously, West Georgia, then they host Miles, and then travel to Savannah State. So you're trying to find wins and avoid going 0 for 4 in the month of September. So that's the big challenge for Morehouse right now. So it'll be interesting to see. And then for Clark takes on Lane, hosting that game against Lane. That's actually the first SIAC contest. So it's an opportunity for Clark to actually go 2-0 and 1-0 in the conference. Yeah. All right. Jamie, I'm not going to pick on you or ask you about your Aggies. I'm not going to do that to you because I'm going to.
No, we can chop it up about the Aggies. We can chop it up about them.
Well, let's hold that thought, Jamie. Let's take a quick break and let's let them hold over and let them chop up about those Aggies, Brian.
Well, let's do that. I know we got a tight spot here, Drew. I know we got Charles coming in a little bit. So let's do this. We will table the talk about A&T, and then we'll kind of come back to it around the horn. How about that? So that way we don't throw anyone's schedule off too bad. All right. So I'm just messing with you a little bit, Jimmy. I'm not gonna mess with you too bad, though.
Hey, we'll see. You know that schedule is tough, man. So hey, yeah, I might have to eat all kinds of crow.
Right there
you
with
prefer,
you.
You prefer hot sauce or seasoning?
I'm a hot sauce man. Texas Pete.
All right. Make sure you follow. Go find the AUC Gridiron Rewind on Spotify, Google Play Store, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are listening and downloading your podcast, and you can get connected in and find out what's going on in the AU Center right there from Jamie Walker. And Jamie, we appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming in, giving us some insight on what's going on there in the AU. And man, be safe and take care, man. We'll be in touch.
Definitely appreciate you, Jamie. Thank you both. Appreciate y'all having me on.
All right, we'll be back right after these words with Charles Bishop and the pregame show right after these words.
Can I get the now bar, please?
$1.
Have a good one.
Got it.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Let me get a now bar.
Sure. $1.
Appreciate you.
You got it.
It's the show where we take you inside the game before the game begins. It's the pregame. With your host, Charles Bishop and Neely. So get ready, because we pregame harder than the other show's party. It's the pregame.
Shop Velvet Online Women's Boutique to spice up your closet with trendy, unique looks. We have fashionable and chic looks at very affordable prices. Velvet Boutique offers free shipping all year long on all orders. Shop online at www.melvetboutique.com. That's www.melvetboutique.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Shop Velvet Online Women's Boutique.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time. All right, welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan and A.D. here. Appreciate Jamie Walker for joining us in that last segment. Drew, what did you have? I know you said you wanted to drop a couple of nuggets in before we.
Yeah, just a couple of comments from a couple of people watching us on Facebook, YouTube, BCSN app, and mybcsn.net. Frank Lee, the voice of the Golden Tigers, Tuskegee Golden Tigers football, play-by-play man, says, good evening, guys. And we were talking about those dorms, Brian, where Renee James says, tell them to come to Langston. Our apartments were built in 2000 in stadiums, and we won against a conference team 10-7 when we were talking about those wins against historically white institutions.
Okay. All right. Yeah, look, Langston is one of those teams that seems to constantly be in the mix, and they've established themselves as a very strong program. And I have no doubts that come late November in the Sooner Athletic Conference that they will be right there challenging for another SAC title and hopefully a playoff bid in the NAIA. So that'll be coming up. And so I know coming up here in a moment, we've got Charles Bishop from the pregame show talking about Jackson State. And man, if anybody had a better weekend than Jackson State, man, you tell me who they are, because woo, Charles, it's good to see you. It's good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Brian. Good to be in, buddy. Yeah, it was a heck of a weekend. If you had anything on your clothing apparel that said "D I love Jackson State," all of the above, prime time, whatever.
Hey, I will give Tiger Nation a big kudos, because it was good to see as many folks showed up. First off, the overall attendance numbers were about 30,000. I think 30,100 is what was announced at the Orange Blossom Classic. Lower than my prediction of 50, but then again, I first made my predictions before the Delta variant became this thing that really freaked a lot of people out. You know, it is what it is. So, but still, I think 30,000 was great. And then to see so many people from Jackson travel was also big. What are your thoughts on the attendance and the crowd?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think when you take a look at, I think the excitement and the fervor for 50,000 was in place, but the Delta variant, especially during the month of August, I think really siphoned off quite a bit of Jackson State's fan base that was planning to go. I know a lot of people personally who ended up canceling their reservations and things of that nature, just not wanting to deal with the ugly side of the pandemic. But you're talking about 30,000 fans during a pandemic for this game. That's strong, to be very honest with you, in this sort of environment. So hopefully everybody took the proper precautions with regards to being down in Miami. But that's a big number considering the circumstances.
Let me ask you, both of you guys, this. So both of you guys were in Miami. I was in Montgomery, Alabama. What was the atmosphere like? In the hotels, on the streets, in the restaurants, the different places where you guys were at for Jack. Both let you go first, Charles, with around Jackson State, and then you, Brian, tell us how the FAMU atmosphere was from a FAMU point of view.
Yeah, the alumni hotel was buzzing, to be honest with you. You consciously would not have thought that there was a pandemic other than people wearing masks and things of that nature. And that was the same with regards to some of the other party type atmospheres down there. Jackson State was well represented down there in Miami. And then when you saw, the amount of people that showed up on Jackson State side and in the suites as well, I thought it was a tremendous showing for Tiger Nation.
What about you, Brian?
I think people were excited to be back out. I think people were excited to be there for football, and that part shouldn't have been lost on anybody. And then the fact that this was a SWAC opponent. This was us going against Jackson State. This was us going against Coach Prime. I say us, FAMU. And so our new venture into the SWAC, and I had I seen some great shirts by some of the vendors that trumpeted the fact that, look, there's a level of arrogance that Rattler Nation has, and we're coming into the SWAC with that arrogance, and and we fit. We fit right in there with Jackson State, and we fit right in there with Southern, and so that's all things considered. I don't know what's more disappointing, the fact that we lost the way we lost, or the fact that we lost to Jackson State, who we lost to. You know what I'm saying? This is not as bad as losing to Bethune-Cookman, but now we're sitting on 2 losses in a row in over 700 days to Jackson State and Bethune, and that bothers a lot of people. Trust me, it does.
And both of those losses were what, 3-point games? If I remember correctly, going back to 2019, I know it was less than one score.
Yeah, it was definitely less than a score, less than a touchdown. Definitely on both ends. Charles, let me ask this. Okay, so from your vantage point, as you look back on this game, do we say this was a great, and honestly from both sides, or you can come from just the Jackson State side, a great defensive game, or would you say that the offenses were the offensive struggles, one more so than the other, caused this game to be sloppy the way it was, or less productive offensively the way it was expected to be?
I think you had 2 great defenses in this game. I think both teams had opportunities, but you have to take your hats off at some point to the defenses of both teams. I mean, that the front 7 for Florida A&M, they were flying around. The front 7 for Jackson State, they were flying around, and both secondaries, showed up. Marquise Bell has a couple of nice plays in there. Jackson State missed some opportunities downfield that were there. And it was just really, when you have 2 really good defenses, it's really hard to get into an ebb and flow. And then one of the statistics that I saw with regards to this game, both teams had 10 penalties. So it really took away from getting into some sort of offensive groove when, you take 2 steps forward and then take 1 step backwards. So things of that nature. And, that sometimes that's just football. That's just the way it is, especially when you have defenses that can really clamp down.
Hey, let me throw these in. I'm looking at some of the comments off of our YouTube. Mary 305, I was there at the Orange Blossom Classic game. FAMU needs to work on the quarterback situation. We're going to let you comment on that in just a moment, Brian. Thalmus James says COVID played a huge part in the attendance portion. That's what Charles just said. Being low attendance, nevertheless, it was an electric game and atmosphere. I think that's pretty much what you were saying there, Charles. But he also says, from a JSU alumnus and coach, FAMU is going to be a force in the SWAC, hands down. Maybe we got a chance, fellas. Maybe we got a chance, Brian.
So this is what I'm curious at. I know at which points I was nervous. Charles, why and at what points were you nervous? And you can be honest and say I wasn't really nervous. I will completely respect you if you say that. But at what points were you nervous, and why might you have been nervous at that point?
That's a very interesting way to look at it. I don't think I was nervous up until that last drive, and it's simply from the standpoint over the past few years, over the past 4 or 5 years of Jackson State futility, we've just seen them lose games like that. That's just been the reality of Jackson State football over the past 4 or 5 years, where that big play never showed up, where you didn't make that stop that you needed to make. I think there was that little draw play to I think Bishop Bonnet that gained 15 or so yards and got them back in the field goal position. I think that was a point where I was like, oh boy, here we go, that sort of thing. And then it was over the next 2 or 3 plays, it was snuffed out. But there was a point yesterday where I felt the defense was in control of things. And of course, Neely and I were on the sideline talking to guys, and they never wavered. Defensive line coach Jeff Weeks said, we got it. Just stay the course, do your job. Linebackers coach also Andre Hart was in the same mindset. Definitely Dennis Sturman, defensive coordinator, was never nervous at any point. He was dialing up blitzes left and right. Amazing job. Well called game by Dennis Sturman. Yes.
Speaking of that, and I'm glad you pointed that coach out, Dennis Thurman, because I thought and you tell me now that the game is over, was there something that the Jackson State coaches saw in, obviously they knew that if McKay was the starter, that maybe he was a step slow, or maybe there were some tendencies they saw in the one game that he played, because there wasn't much film on anybody. And so I just felt like the blitz packages that were called were next level. Or maybe it was the talent as well, but there were 7, 8 guys coming in. It was like, wait a minute, how come nobody is figuring out the pass protections? And I couldn't tell if that was the quarterback or whether it was the blitz packages being drawn up. But was there a tendency or something that the Jackson State coaches saw that, or maybe they just said, hey, we're going to do what we do, and if FAMU comes up with a game plan, then we'll adjust? What were your
great point. I think the overall mindset is we're going to do what we do. And what we do is whatever it takes. We're going to get pressure on the quarterback. I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but the first things, stop the run. And once I think Jackson State established that FAMU was not going to get that running game up and going, it made them a little bit more one-dimensional. And then you're able to play that sort of cat and mouse, that chess match with the quarterback, and with the offensive line, where you have them guessing where that rusher is going to come from. So I think during the course of the game, you saw a lot of times where they would show blitz, they drop out of it and drop into their hook zones and things of that nature, which, made the passing lanes a little bit more difficult for McKay. But then there were times where, they were coming and they were bringing the house at times where, it was just on the defensive backs. You're man up, let your talent take over, and let's see what happens.
Now Charles, got to ask you this. There was all this talk about a Sanders. But I'm not talking about the quarterback. I'm talking about the Sanders that actually may have had a little bit more of an impact in the game, and that's on the other side of the ball, wearing his dad's old number, that being Shiloh. And when I only saw the first half of the game, still have not had the opportunity to watch the second half of the game, but Shiloh made some plays, and no offense to his father, Bryan, who was a great defensive back. Shiloh laid some wood a couple of times that his dad never would have laid. Give us your talk about the other Sanders.
One thing you will quickly learn about Shiloh Sanders, he loves to lay the wood. He calls himself the CEO of the headache gang. The whole defense is the headache gang, and he is the CEO. He sets the attitude, if you will, for the defense. For the defensive side of the ball. I mean, he loves coming up, laying the lumber. That's what he does. He wants to set a tone. And that is, it's funny to watch both Shedeur and Shiloh up close. They're polar opposite ends of the spectrum. Shedeur is measured. His nickname is Grown because he's just a mature sort of 19-year-old.
You said grown?
Grown, Grown, exactly. Yeah, his nickname is Grown, but he just carries himself like a 30-year-old, and he's only 19. Never too up, never too down. It's exactly what you want out of your quarterback. Shiloh, this part he gets from dad. Hey, he chirps. It is constant with Shiloh. One of the things that you're going to start seeing, especially with regards to footage that we had from during the game on the sideline, is Shiloh keeps that defense up. He is the talker. He loves coming up, laying the wood. And I mean, that is what Shiloh Sanders does.
Yeah, that hit. I mean, I hadn't seen hits by a Sanders like that. And I don't know if ever, because he came down the field. He hit people like he was a free safety. It was impressive. It was really impressive. And I thought, the
only time I saw a Sanders involved in plays like that was when there was another Sanders named Barry who would put a move on people so fast that the two defenders hit each other trying to hit him.
Yeah, I'll tell you, so between Gaddy and Miller, it's funny. I know Aubrey Miller got a lot of the praise for the 9 tackles and the recognition, but I'll be honest, I thought between Gaddy and Shiloh, those were the two who I found to be the most impactful defensive players. And then the one thing offensively, Charles, the willingness to attack deep. That's the thing that I thought that separated this ball game. Jackson State and Shiloh, and I tried to ask Coach Prime this in the post game presser, but I mean he wasn't giving too much praise for the offensive line. I think he wasn't. He said they did all right, but I thought he had time, and the time that he had bought him enough time to throw deep. Mm-hmm. And those 3 or 4 passes that he threw deep, even and especially the one that may have set up the touchdown, the one that he threw deep and got the penalty when FAMU was called for the targeting or the unsportsmanlike, and he stood in there, he connected on about a 40-yard pass play to the left sideline from midfield, and I was just looking like, oh my gosh. I mean, the arm talent that and that was the difference. I thought the difference came down to one quarterback versus the other quarterback and who had time to throw the ball down the field for more than 5 yards. Talk about Shedeur, just the passing game in general, because I think that's going to separate Jackson State this year is the passing game. What's your thoughts on your thoughts on the passing game from Jackson State?
Well, I know it's difficult to have seen it yesterday because they only scored 7 points. But Jackson State is going to attack teams vertically, and they have a bevy of receivers that can get downfield, either from the X, the Y, the Z, or the H. When you're talking about the speed and talent of a Josh Lanier, number one, the transfer from Alabama, whether you're talking about Keith Corbin, or you saw yesterday, the young man from Florida, Trevante Rucker, they all can get downfield and they can cause havoc. And then we really didn't see much from Shane Hooks yesterday, but Shane Hooks is another one who can get downfield, and you give him those 50-50 balls and they quickly become 70-30 balls. He has that sort of a vertical ability. And then another receiver that you should at least keep an eye out for is Malachi Wildman, who is the transfer from Tennessee. Hooks and Wildman, both 6'4", 6'5", both can get downfield and both can go up in high point balls. So the willingness and the ability to attack defenses vertically, I think is something that could separate Jackson State from the rest of the pack.
This is going to be my last question that I have for you, Charles. And this is a little bit away from the football game, but it's still on the football field. There was an article put out, I believe that was today. My days are running together, so forgive me when I say this. Where Coach Prime talked about put their names on the back of the jersey. He was like, even if I got to pay for a swag, please put the names on the back of the jersey. Mama want to see their child name on the back of the jersey. Just your thoughts about that, and just how he's kind of taken not only Jackson State and the issues of surrounding Jackson State, but the issues surrounding the SWAC and HBCU football and trying to elevate this game that we love.
And I know it rubs some fans of HBCU ball the wrong way, but the reality of it is Coach Prime is a progressive thinker, and he is always thinking of innovation in ways to push our game forward, especially our HBCU team forward, whether it's putting names on the back of jerseys. He wants that visibility element present within HBCU football, and doesn't see any reason why it shouldn't be that way, because he will tell you in a heartbeat, the talent is there across the board for guys to get drafted. He just wants another vehicle for all of these teams to get noticed.
Well, he said that comment during the post-game presser when he made that statement. So not surprising. I think every press conference there is going to be something that he says non-related to the game that is going to catch people and be a buzz.
And we know this. I mean, with regards to HBCU football, change sometimes is difficult. But it's part of what makes us great, and sometimes some things that hinder us. We do appreciate and rely on tradition, but in some ways, that could be a gift and a curse. So he's always trying to push the envelope with regards to breaking from whatever has been the norm. And sometimes that's just going to be a raw flashpoint.
And I will say, memo to everyone out there, it doesn't require a comment or a press release. Every time Coach Sanders says something, you don't have to respond to it. I'll move on. I'll move on.
Coach Sanders went down and got his oil changed and so and so and so and so. We'll have an article on somebody's website or newspaper or tweet or something. Hey, Coach Sanders came in here, got his oil changed. Hey, he actually had the nerve to buy some new tires when other tires were starting to wear out. But he bought them before they were bald. You buy tires when they bald, not Coach Sanders.
Oh my God! Please, conferences, stop sending out memos every time Coach Sanders mentions your conference. Anyway, Tennessee State's coming up next. Charles, what's the look ahead? Your thoughts on that? Tennessee State and just that Southern Heritage Classic. I mean, which is a staple for Jackson State every year. What can you share about that as folks start to look ahead towards this upcoming Saturday's contest? Coach Prime versus Eddie George, Hall of Famers. There'll be a lot of talk going on all week about that.
Well, I think geographically, I think the fans who didn't make it to Miami, they will figure out a way to get to Memphis. So that game is always close to 45, 50,000, and it has become a staple within the HBCU football culture with this Jackson State and Tennessee State team meeting at the midway point, Memphis, Tennessee, if you will. But always a tremendous time had by all in Memphis. And it's a normal grudge match that Tennessee State, up until 2019, really had the upper hand. I think they had the better talent overall for quite some time, but I think the winds of change have sort of happened. I think you see now with Tennessee State, this is their third SWAC loss in the past 2 years. I think they lost to Jackson State and UAPB in 2019, and then the loss to yesterday to Grambling. So I think the SWAC talent, I think, has definitely gotten better, and in some ways, maybe it has caught up to Tennessee State. But for Jackson State next week, I think again the game plan defensively: stop the run, make your team one-dimensional, and then you can pin your ears back and tee off.
I think that classic is going to draw probably better than the Orange Blossom Classic did this week, especially when you consider those two fan bases. That's a drivable classic.
Yeah, it's a drivable
which
classic.
Means I get in my car, I ride out, I can go to the game, I could stay in a hotel, or if I really wanted to, I could drive back home. And consider this pandemic climate, and this is talked about for both universities, because the distance is if it's under 4 hours, it's a car ride. And people are willing to do that, go to a game and ride back on the same day, given this pandemic, and not have to worry about the hotels and the airplanes and stuff like that. But even if I do stay in a hotel, I may not be coming up 2 nights. I'll stay in the hotel the night after the game and still drive home. So I think it's going to be a better atmosphere, even a better atmosphere than Orange Blossom.
And I think the big thing about the Southern Heritage Classic, it is part of Memphis football culture. So you're going to have that buy-in from the local Memphis economy, the local Memphis fan base, whereas the Orange Blossom Classic, it is a renewal of a classic that just is coming back online, if you will. So it still needs time to develop that growth within the Miami community.
All right. Well, again, make sure check out all the work that Charles and Neely are doing with the pregame show. Thankfully, we didn't make any bets, so I don't have to walk around. I don't have to wear any JSU gear or anything like that. I will just humbly say congratulations on the win. It was an enjoyable game. Glad I got a chance to see you guys down there. Make sure to follow Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at The Pregame Show. Also find them on the BCSN Pod Zone. And then tomorrow night, I think Charles will be back in the lab with Dr. Cavill and Mike Washington. So that'll be 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central. And so we always appreciate Charles for joining us when he can. All right, go get some rest, because I know you got to be tired, Charles.
Oh man, I have a little coffee right here now. So
all right, appreciate you again, Charles Bishop, The Pregame Show, and Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. When we come back right after the break, we'll break down a little bit more from week one, tell you who we're kind of bullish and bear about after week 1. So you're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and A.D. We'll be back right after these words.
Both of my great-grandfathers have been a part of that study. My roots in environmental health come from my great-grandfathers. They were sharecroppers, and then later they were able to own land for their family for generations to come. My ancestors' connection to the land has given me a strong care for our environment and how that environment influences human health. I am a fierce advocate for equitable treatment for all. The ways in which COVID-19 ravaged Black communities showed that we have underlying vulnerabilities when something like a pandemic hits. The path from tragedy to triumph travels along the path of learning.
Let's get back to getting ticks instead of watching flicks. Before we can safely get out there, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your crew.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
All right, thanks for watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and A.D. Drew here. And I want to again thanks Charles Bishop and Jamie Walker, who joined us in the last 2 segments that we had. And we always enjoy talking with those guys. Great coverage, not only by Charles and Neely with the pregame show, and of course of Dr. Cavilles inside the HBCU Sports Lab, but then Jamie Walker. Make sure to go check out the podcast, the AUC Gridiron Rewind. That's what you can find wherever you listen to podcasts. So there you go. Drew, what do we got? We got some comments. What do you got for us?
Yeah, when you get a chance, you have to go to the YouTube. Thalmus and Leon are going back and forth about the Orange Blossom Classic, breaking down the plays, talking about the JSU defensive scheme, and FAMU showing run every time they came up in a formation. It's a very interesting conversation that they have going on here. So
let me add in. We will have a full FAMU breakdown Wednesday night live, 8 p.m. Eastern on the ONG Strike Zone. Myself, Kofi Hemingway, Kelvin Rozier. We're going to break down the Orange Blossom Classic, that podcast, that show, strictly talking about FAMU athletics. But somebody on that show predicted and tried to tell everybody to be on the lookout for that true freshman quarterback at FAMU. And he was shouted down. He was told, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know that guy.
But going back to the names on the back of the jersey, Leon says names on the back of the jersey. You play harder so you won't get roasted when you go home. LOL.
And I'm old school. Look, I grew up in Indiana where you didn't look. There were two things you didn't do. You didn't get the number one, and you didn't have names on the back. Nobody, the number one, nobody is bigger than the team.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of old school that way. So I get it. You know, you don't wear number one, and you don't put the names on the back. Now, I get putting names on the back at the end of the season, but it's college. But now that everybody's getting paid, I guess for NIL, you might as well put the names on the back now.
Yeah, it really is. Go ahead and put the names on the back of the jersey, because once again, going back to YouTube, Leon said it's accountability. Now you're accountable for that name on the back of the jersey and that name on the front of the jersey.
Yep. Any other comments?
No, those are the main two highlights. Like I said, there's a lot of breaking down of the game, and a lot of it is co-signing on a lot of the topics that we talked about already here on the show.
All right. Well, look, we can't look now. The FAMU JSU game was one of the two games that we thought would be the most hyped game going into, but we were really feeling like there was a 1A and a 1B, and the 1B game really turned out to be probably the 1A game. I don't know. There's such a contrast in styles and outcomes between Alabama A&M South Carolina State game and the Jackson State FAMU game. Both of them were. Here's the thing, Drew. Both of them were 1-point ball games. Think about that for a second. 1-point ball games.
That came down to the last drive.
And came down to it came down to the last drive in both games.
Yeah.
Defense
and the
won
defense
out.
is held.
Defense is held. Exactly. But the low-scoring FAMU JSU game versus the high-scoring A&M South Carolina State game, final score A&M with a 42-41 victory, highlighted, of course, by Aqeel Glass throwing 28 of 49 for 426 yards, 4 touchdowns, no INTs, sacked just once. Gary Quarles ran for 22 carries, 129 yards and a touchdown. But it should not be slept on the fact that South Carolina State really got some great production from Corey Fields. Corey Fields Jr., I mean, yes, he had the one interception. One of his two was at the end of the ball game, but I thought he did a great job answering the bell. But what was really impressive is South Carolina State ran for 242 yards total, and they had three guys rush for over 73 yards. Alex James, 13 carries for 73. Kendrell Flowers, 14 carries for 80 and 3 touchdowns. And then Corey Fields himself, 9 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown. And Drew, I think South Carolina State looked like the South Carolina State that we have grown accustomed to in the MEAC, being that kind of team. I mean, they ran 242, Drew, 242. And all the talk coming into this game was, has Alabama A&M's defense improved? I don't know if we're going to hang a hat on it and say yes or no, but you just gave up 41 points to South Carolina State.
The question is, can Alabama A&M continue to just outscore everybody in the SWAC? Based on one game that everybody has played, no other team offensively has shown in the SWAC has shown that they may be able to keep up with Alabama A&M on the offensive side. And when you have Aqeel Glass as your quarterback, it's just like having Tom Brady back there. You better keep up, or Peyton Manning. You better keep up, because he's going to put some points up on you. So you're going to have a good offensive showing. I've got to discount UAPB because that was the Division II opponent. No one else in the SWAC had an offensive explosion this past week.
Yeah, this game, there were 7 lead changes in this ball game.
And I'll attest to that because sitting in the booth out at the Alabama State Miles game, every time I looked down at my doggone iPad, somebody else had the lead because we had that game on the iPad while we're watching the game live in the stadium.
Right. Outside of the tie, South Carolina State scored first. Alabama A&M came out and tied it, then jumped on a lead. And then once South Carolina State kicked the field goal with 14-10 in the second quarter, everything else was flipped. You had flip. Nobody scored more than 3 consecutive possessions. Alabama A&M scored twice. South Carolina State twice. There was a period where, as I'm looking at the stats here, trying to think back, there was a period where South Carolina State had scored 4 of 5 scores. They had a lead by 10 early in the third quarter, but there was an answer for an answer. This was a fitting game. It streamed on YouTube for Alabama A&M, and
I think that was the saddest part of that game. Not the fact that it streamed on YouTube. It was the fact that it was hard to find that game on YouTube. That was the sad part about it. There's nothing wrong with the game streaming on YouTube, but it should have been a lot, especially arguably the game of the week, should have been easier for fans to find.
That I agree with you 100%. That was a fail by somebody. The fact that game didn't end up on. Look, I'm all for promoting your own games and platforms. So let me say that I don't think you have to go to ESPN. Look, we're all on the same internet. But I will say, if you had the opportunity to put this one on ESPN3, it should have been there, right? Because here's what I saw, and I'm going behind the curtain here. Great job by Alabama A&M to get this on their YouTube channel, but at the same time, you missed out on opportunities to promote your campus. You missed out on the advertising opportunities. This was the game of the week. I don't think I saw any ads running. I don't know if I saw any sponsorship reads. I think they were running it in conjunction with the radio broadcast. So
yes, it was simulcast on the radio, because sometimes you would see you would have the latency between what you saw and what you heard.
Which means then I don't think when they went to a commercial, I don't think they were running the commercial ads on the YouTube stream. So again, opportunities are missed. I don't know if you're trying to get YouTube clicks and dollars, okay, that's great. But there was sales opportunities there. That was the biggest game so far of the season. It was the biggest game of the week, next to just compare and contrast what the stage and platform was for FAMU and Jackson State, even the game with Tennessee State and Grambling, the game with Fort Valley State and Tuskegee. Think about the platform and the stage. This game should have been on a stage of equal platform, or at least somebody should have been selling advertising. So I'm just gonna say that. But anyway.
Hey, I got one. Hey, Fox, we need y'all to get into the HBCU business. NBC Sports has been in it. ESPN is in it. NFL Network is in it. Fox Sports, we need you. I don't say need in a begging way.
I don't need Fox Sports. How many shows and games do we do, Drew? We run commercials and ads. We sell packages.
Yes.
I don't need Fox Sports. Come give us a call. Black College Sports Network. We would have sold the hell out of this package for you, Alabama A&M. All right, anyway, let's move on before we get in trouble, before I say something. But, hey, I have said South Carolina State, toughest, best non-conference schedule. Think about who they play. Alabama A&M, they play FAMU, they play North Carolina A&T, they play Bethune-Cookman. That is a heck of a non-conference schedule. And then, of course, South Carolina State still has to play their regular season. This upcoming week, yeah, they're MEAC games. South Carolina State travels to Clemson this week, who might be feeling some kind of way after getting mollywopped by Georgia. So they'll be feeling some kind of way. So watch out, South Carolina State. Maybe you can come in as Bulldogs. Hey, look, more Bulldogs for Clemson. Alabama A&M has a bye, and then they have to get ready for Bethune-Cookman. So that'll be good for A&M. A much-timed bye week for them. One thing I will say about Naquil Glass, Drew, before we move off and go to our bullish and bear things, I love the fact that 4 interceptions, no touchdowns. I'll nitpick about the completion percentage, though. 28 of 49, just over 50%. And I asked this question. Remember, what did the question I asked you? Touchdown to interception ratio versus completion percentage. What was more important? 4-0 versus about 55%.
Looks like 4-0.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying it depends on what you value, because that'll be interesting to see as we go.
And the one thing about those that completion percentage, when you go back and look at the film, which I have not had the opportunity to look at it yet, what type of throws was he missing? Were those just balls that the receivers were just going through the receiver hands, they were on target, or were they considerably short and considerably long? Those are the type of things that the NFL scouts will be looking at. How are you with those misses?
Right. I mean, let's go take a look at those 21 misses and let's see what those look like. All right, Drew, let's as we get ready to close out this show, again, thanks for everyone out there who's watching. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching us, so that way, whenever the next show comes on, you will be there. If you're a podcast only person, make sure you go download and find the BCSN Pod Zone. That's BCSN Pod Zone. All of the shows that are part of the Black College Sports Network are featured on the BCSN Pod Zone. So you can go from one show to the next without having to search around and try to find all of the great content that we bring you. And then, of course, go download that Jericho Broadcast Networks app on Google and Apple Play Store, MyJBN or MyBCSN. Okay, who are we bullish and bear about after week 1? This is kind of how we're going to close this show. And we're going to start to do this maybe every show. We're going to kind of lean on our years as a part of the
in the Bull and Bear Lounge on the campus of Florida A&M University in the School of Business and Industry. And when I say lounge, it was not that kind of lounge, everybody.
One of the greatest, still is the greatest business school among HBCUs, among business schools overall in the country, might I add. Shout out to the late Dee Motley for all that she did to build the great SBI. So the Bull and Bear teams from week 1, Drew. All right. So again, those of you who don't know, the Bull teams are the teams that we are
feeling good about.
Feeling good about.
Not Bull, you know what?
no bullshiggity, but these are teams that we are looking to invest in. They are moving in the right direction. The Bear are the teams that we're not feeling
take
so
them down
good
to the
about
swap
it.
meet.
Exactly. All right, Drew, let's go with your first team that you're bullish about.
Well, got to start off with the obvious one, Brian, the team that beat our alma mater, Jackson State University. They came in a lot of questions about how quickly this team would gel. They've shown through one game that defensively they have gelled. Offense still looks like it's going to be a work in progress a little bit on the offense side, but that defense is good enough to keep them in the game right now while the offense progresses.
I'm definitely bullish on Jackson State as well. I voted them number 2 in the most recent poll that I'm a part of. That's how high I previously had them at number 8. I moved them 6 spots. I saw what I needed to see in 1 week to know that this is a Jackson State team that's going to be a real problem for people all year. So I'm very bullish on Jackson State. I'll go to Delaware State. How about that? I'm going to say I'm very bullish about Delaware State. Coach Rod Milstead getting a win, open up the season against Bowie State, who, look, I thought this was the test for Bowie State. I mean, we talked about the fact that Bowie State has not lost to look, I'm trying to find my notes here. We talked about they had lost to a non-conference HBCU team in almost 3 years. The last time they lost a season opener was 2018, I think it was. The defending under D1 Black College National champions. They were the what other accolades can I give Bowie? They were on a 16-game regular season winning streak. There was a lot going on there, and Delaware State jumped on them. A pick six at the end of the first half, pushed the lead to 26-3. They picked off Jerome Johnson 4 times. They had 2 fumble recoveries. They blocked 3 kicks. Just an overall yeoman's effort. And look at this, Drew, and I'll get off of this. I did the math. There are 45 true freshmen on Delaware State's roster. There are 52 redshirt and true freshmen. There are 70 redshirt sophomores to true freshmen. Those are guys that have only been in the program for, 1 to 3 years, I think that is?
Yes.
So over 75% of that roster is made up of redshirt sophomores or younger. Delaware State, pay attention, watch out for them. They're going to be a team to reckon with in the next season or two. Might even be this season, depending upon what happens. So who's your next team that you're bullish about?
I am bullish about Albany State. The Golden Rams defeated Mississippi College 24-0. But check out this stat line though. Well, Mississippi College only completed 3 passes for the entire day for 38 yards. So you would think that Mississippi College was run heavy, which they were, 34 rushing attempts, but only gave up 148 yards rushing. So definitely bullish about Albany State, and for Albany State to say basically the face of the SIAC when it came to non-conference games over the weekend, and they were the only SIAC to win a non-conference game, correct?
Yes.
So have to be bullish about the Albany State Rams.
I'm bullish about Prairie View A&M after their 40-17 win over Texas Southern in the Labor Day Classic in Houston. But the reason I'm so bullish about Prairie View, they got a quarterback, Jawan Pass, transfer from Louisville. Matter of fact, this young man apparently, just 2018 had started 9 of 11 games that he played in for Louisville, had a foot injury in 2019, and I don't think he was fully capable of playing in 2020. So I don't know if he has 1 or 2 years left. This is sort of his redshirt senior year, but then again, last year he got an extra year of eligibility. So Jawan Pass, all he does in his season debut, goes 25 of 37, 354 yards passing, throws 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. Then he runs 7 times for 47 yards as well for Prairie View. And he's 6'4", big size, I felt like this is all Prairie View needed. Prairie View needed to find a quarterback to go with its defense. So I'm interested to see, can Prairie View keep this up? The last time they had a guy with this kind of size, they were wrecking havoc offensively with people. That was the name by Jalen Morton. So let's see if Jawan Pass can keep things going for Prairie View. All right, let's go to teams that we're bearish about, Drew. Teams that we are bearish about going into or after week 1. Who are you bearish about?
Tuskegee. 3 yards of total offense, only 4 yards rushing. You know, the Tuskegee alumni, which I am a part of, are a very proud group. Tuskegee does not have 696 victories for no reason. Tuskegee is not 99 victories clear of the number 2 team, which is Florida A&M when it comes to victories at 597. With all of that being said, the Tuskegee alumni, and I'm speaking for the alumni, this is not my personal feelings, this is just some of the alumni chats that I have been a part of.
Things are dangerous.
Are not happy right now. And for the alumni to feel this way after our coach has been there for 15 years, slow down, Tuskegee. Slow down just a little bit. But I do have to be bearish about what I saw out there on the field offensively, but let's give it time. We are Tuskegee for a reason. Hopefully the tradition shall rise again.
Yeah, you right now, you say that, you throwing around that name. And well, look, hey, show me a fan base that lost and is happy today. That's all I'm going to say. And I'll show you a team that's used to losing. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm saying. So, Tuskegee, you are not alone. There are other people in the woods with you complaining.
We ain't worried about nobody else.
I'm just saying. I tweeted something out, Drew, earlier that I said I miss message boards. Because remember with message boards after a loss, you had to actually go log onto your computer and then actually log in, go find the computer, log in, sit there and complain. Nowadays, because of Twitter, you just whip out the phone, jump on Twitter, and just let it flow. And it's a hot mess. So,
or the Facebook chat groups.
Yes, all accessible via your phone. So I miss chat. I miss message boards when there was no cell phone and you had to actually go log on to a computer. So I miss those days.
That's what the true fans used to do.
Yeah, exactly. Now anybody can get on there and complain about this dumb stuff. I was really amused Saturday night at some of the stuff I read. FAMU Twitter, I'm talking to you. All right, let's go to North. I'm bearish about North Carolina A&T, and I think the Jermaine Martin held to just 35 yards rushing. They were outgained as a team. Let's see, 362 to 260. Oh, excuse me. 487 to 339 by Furman. I mean, this is an A&T team that has historically shown up against non-conference FCS and even FBS opponents. But I think it just makes me question and wonder whether this might be a rebuild or not necessarily a reload for the Aggies. And it'll be interesting to see. Because I think there was a lot of hype. Look, they were preseason ranked number 1 in the HBCU Pro Sports Media poll. A lot of other polls had them ranked number 2. So for them to lose the way they did, I'm really nervous. And I think upcoming, their schedule, Drew, for A&T, they've got Duke coming up and a bye, and then they play North Carolina Central. If you ask me today, who I'm more likely to pick, I'm more likely to pick North Carolina Central. And I say that a complete 180 based on where I was, 10 days ago, So, yeah. And one more, second team you're bearish about, Drew.
Virginia State. To lose a region game, it happens. But to lose a region game the way that Virginia State lost that region game against a team that you are expected to compete. And if you're going to be one of the elite teams in the CIAA, you're going to see teams of this caliber in the playoffs. Virginia State, check this out, Brian. 90 yards passing total. 58 yards rushing on 26 attempts. So Virginia State, it has come down to you and Bowie the last 3 years in the CIAA. You have been right there on the cusp of an at-large berth. Unless you turn it around real quick this year, it ain't gonna happen, Bowie. Because they're not going to put you in when you have results like this against equal competition. And Lenore Ryan is considered equal competition with the regional standings.
Well said. I will close this segment by saying I'm bearish about FAMU, to be honest. I really am. And that's because of the quarterback position. I think there was so much talent and so much hype about the talent. And for whatever reason, the quarterback position was an absolute mess. And the play calling didn't look consistent. And I hope it gets fixed. But, when you haven't seen your team win in almost 2 years, I'm 700 something days now, that gets to you. And so I think that's the sentiment by a lot of folks, Rattler Nation, about their team right now. And all season we kind of thought one guy, but I think if people were really being honest with themselves and they were listening to what Coach was saying, Coach was trying to tell us that there is another quarterback that might be a better play. And I think he waited a little bit too long. And I think the fact that he waited, I thought the quarterback change should have happened at halftime. I'm not the head coach, obviously. So he gets paid a lot of money to make that decision. I think he made it late. And, it kind of cost us. Among other things, there were other penalties and mistakes, but I can't help but going back and look at the box score, and I see nothing but donuts in the second half. 2 field goals, 1 touchdown, and I can't come away but help them think, Drew, a field goal was blocked at the end of the first half. Just imagine had that actually not got blocked and it been made.
FAMU wins 9-7.
You mean we could have won 9-7? Ugh. But anyway. So hopefully my mind is changed. I know Fort Valley is coming into town, and hopefully I'm feeling better about things in a week.
If you saw what I saw on defense for Fort Valley, FAMU needs to be a little concerned.
All right, well said. All right, that's going to do it for this show. Make sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on social media at MyBCSN1. You see our personal Twitter feeds. Hit us up. Let us know what you think about. Appreciate everybody that's been chatting in YouTube. We appreciate you. Make sure to like this broadcast, please. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up right now. Everybody who's in there, however many people are in there, or hopefully when you were in there, you hit the thumbs up. And if you're watching this on Facebook, like and share. And if you're on Twitter, make sure you're following us. And that's going to do it for
Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, Dr. Cavill's inside the HBCU Sports Lab, followed at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, Knights of the Round Table, where we'll release the media polls tomorrow evening.
Your number one, I'm sure, didn't change, or did it?
Yes.
And
I'll go ahead and say this. My number one on the major poll stayed the same because I had Alabama A&M number one in the preseason poll.
I did too.
But my number one on the mid-major poll did change.
Mine did too. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, shout out and much appreciation to Jamie Walker for coming in and joining us, and of course to Charles Bishop. for joining us as well. For AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. Thanks for watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. We'll see you later on in the week as we get ready for week number 2 of the college football season. Make sure to stay tuned with everything we do on the Black College Sports Network. We appreciate you, and stay safe. Good night. God bless.
Peace out. I holla.
But you stay hard.